Hello, my name is Jaquel Garcia, and I will be presenting Chapter 4 Kids Need to Learn to Read Fluently by Richard L. Allington. First thing is, I want to talk about what reading fluency is. And so, unlike what many people or even educators as myself may think, fluency is not just about reading quickly. Reading fluency is the ability to read accurately, quickly, effortlessly, with appropriate expression and meaning, all the while understanding what is being read. So I'm going to be talking about three important topics. Number one is why is reading fluency important and how do we measure it? Number two is what causes reading fluency problems? And number three is some interventions that we can use to help these struggling students. My cat. I'm going to read this quote, and this is directly from the chapter. It says, when reading generates little or no comprehension, why would anyone continue to read except to comply with a teacher or parent request? And this is by Allington. So this really is a really powerful statement because ultimately, why is the child, going to want to read uh, if he's not truly, understanding other than just to read because they're being told to read. So this is a very important quote I felt um, in terms as to why fluency is important. Okay, so here's topic number one, which was why is reading fluency important? And we'll go a little bit into how we measure reading fluency. So it says the importance of reading fluency. So here's a couple of reasons. I kind of broke down some of the reasons in the chapter why reading fluency matters. The first bullet says research has shown that early readers making the greatest progress not only read faster and more accurately, but also with better phrasing and intonation. So basically, even at an early age, the early readers, the ones that are reading fluently, are essentially the ones that are making the greatest progress when it comes to reading comprehension or maybe even like testing. So reading should sound like speaking. I know it does develop over time because younger readers do as they're learning, the younger readers do kind of read a little choppy, kind of robotic, but it'll develop over time. When a student reads fluently, they are better able to understand the text and process the information to gain new knowledge. And a child who is not reading fluently will often spend too much time trying to decode, trying to break down the word, sound it out. So by the time they, finish reading a passage or a selection, they have no idea what it is that they read because they spend so much time trying to decode. So here's a little table that I made based off of the chapter. These are the reading rate guidelines, and they were established by Harris and Sepay. Hope I'm not pronouncing that incorrectly. But this is based on the grade. This is a rate at which the students should be reading. So starting at grade one, they should be reading between 60 and 90 words per minute. Grade two should be between 85 and 120. Grade three is 115 to 140. Grade four is 140 to 170. And grade five is 170 to 195. The reading rates also do go up to middle school and high school. But I'm focusing mainly on the elementary grades simply because I am a primary grade teacher. And so these are just the rates from first through fifth. Um, and so one mistake that we can make as teachers, and I have done so in the past when at least when I first started assessing reading fluency, I was simply just looking at the word count, and I had the child read as fast as they could, and it was just week after week trying to get them to read, as many words as they possibly could, and these kids were zooming through these passages, through these little passages, and so it really, I don't know, if I really don't think it was beneficial other than they were just like speed racing. Then they were competing against each other, like, oh, I read more than you. Was it essentially is not the goal of reading fluency. So this is a little sample of a teacher who is assessing fluency. It's kind of similar to what we do in the primary grades, but I'm going to play it and then we can discuss it after. So my reader is going to put his finger up here, and I'm going to tell him the title. It says Birthday Fun. And then he is going to begin reading when I set my timer, and I say, go. Ready, go. Pancakes. No. So now, sorry, I glanced that around a little bit. There's last word with and, okay? And then we're not going to read anymore, so you can read. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to look at what he did, and this. So basically, what the child was doing was just reading this selection. Usually, we call them cold reads when the child has not seen or read this selection before. So it's brand new to the student. And then we would practice during the week, and then at the end of the week, they would do what was a hot read, which was after having practiced it several times. Now, uh, one of the things one of the things that I want to focus on here is because I see that there were a couple of mistakes being made. Mistake number one was simply marking the errors on the student's paper. Um, Definitely, we can have the our own paper and mark the errors on there. I'm sure the child he can tell he's making the mistake, so he can get a little nervous with that. Mistake number two is also at the end, and I didn't show you the whole thing. She just calculates like how many words he read in the minute, and then the errors, and so then it should just calculate. Oh, he made I don't know 26. He read 26 words and he made like five mistakes or whatever. And so then she just wants him to go from 26 on the first read and then improve by the third read. But there was no checking of understanding. And so that's also one of the biggest mistakes we can make because it's not simply about just reading the words, reading them as quickly as you can, but also understanding. I guess they're similar. Mistake number three is just focusing on the word count. And mistake number four, also you do have to calculate accuracy rate because sometimes, especially when they start getting a little older, because it's happened to me before, like when I was teaching first grade. There are some kids that can read and they're zooming through the passages and they can read like 100 words per minute, but they're making a significant amount of mistakes. When you calculate that, they're still meeting the word count, like on the little table I showed you, they're still meeting that rate. However, their accuracy is very low. It's not as high as we would like. So even though they are reading the desired rate for first grade, which was 90 or 120 words, however many it was, the accuracy rate isn't there. And so essentially, the child is reading, has a good word count. But if you were to ask the child, what did you read, or ask questions, they probably wouldn't know because they're still making a lot of errors as they're reading. And so that's one of the things that we need to be looking back on, and it's something that we should not just be looking at word count. Now, I just wanted to put that out there. There's a little app that I like to use. It's called Teacher Tools, I put it there at the bottom of the slide. It's really great for running records if you have to, if your district requires you to do weekly fluency checks. That app is really good. You just input the information there and it calculates it for you real quick. It's just a little tip. Um, and so this is that was what we should not do. And so here's a sample of a first grade student, and this is what reading fluency should look like in first grade.
What does a fluent first grade reader look like? At this age, fluency means reading the words and punctuation more smoothly and at a natural speed. It should sound more like normal speech, normal first grade speech, with a few pauses and not too fast. George Washington Carver was smart and he was kind. He used what he learned to help people have better lives. The mice are not always safe at night. The owl's big round eyes can see even small mice in the dark. A long time ago, there was up and about all year long, and the other animals were not too happy about it. But remember, understanding matters. So, after reading, check that they understand. Can you show me where the problem is? The bear keeps knocking over Mouse's house. So what to look for by the end of the year? Well, come summer, first graders can read words correctly and somewhat smoothly, and they can read at a natural speed, which means not too fast to get in the right understanding.
So again, we see that word count is not the primary focus of fluency. We know that it should be done accurately, and that again, that's what I had mentioned before with the accuracy rate, where these kids are reading meeting the word count, but their accuracy is just not quite there yet. So it should be effortless with meaning, with expression, and they should be able to answer questions at the end of what they read, which shows that they are understanding. Um, we're going to go ahead and move on to topic number two, which was what causes reading fluency problems in students. So we already addressed what it is and how we measure it. So we're going to go ahead and talk about what causes these problems. Um, so why do some readers have fluency problems? So I broke it down into three main um, topics that I saw in the chapter. Some children read with little fluency because they have been given reading material that is simply too difficult for them. And we see this in all grade levels, mainly the higher grades, because if the child is not at grade level and they are given, grade level material, then it's going to be very hard for them to read fluently because the material is much too difficult for them. The second reason why some students have problems is word by word reading, maybe a learned adaptive response. So I kind of had to look that up. I wasn't sure what a learned adaptive response was, but I did. I will go into it in the other slide. But it it is a problem. The third topic is students have limited reading practice and appropriately leveled materials, which simply means they're just not getting enough reading practice throughout the school day, throughout the school year. So this is the first topic, which was difficult reading material. So we talk about how sometimes the material is too difficult because they're not on grade level. So what happens is, we're given this curriculum, we're given this basal reader by our district. And sometimes, these are just not ideal because not everybody can read at the same level. And we do get leveled readers or whatnot. We do incorporate those with our small group, but it's just, it's a problem. The basal readers are just not a one size fits all for everybody. Everybody comes in, especially when they're first, second grade, third grade. They're just not reading at the same level, and sometimes even the fluency checks that we do, everybody gets the exact same one. My high reader and my low reader get the exact same fluency check, so it is kind of a discrepancy there. So we do need to scaffold, and then we can gradually release these students to read more difficult text. but we do have to provide, very explicit intervention before we do that. So, what I want to make a point here is where it says students are not reading fluently because the material is too difficult to read independently, and I want to focus on the word independent. Like that's our key word because even though it may be too difficult, maybe to read on their own, it might be good to do with some guidance. So, and that's again how I had mentioned before with the accuracy rates. So sometimes well, at least this is how we do it. We do the fluency check and we calculate their accuracy rate, and so it'll let you know uh, if it's like an independent reader, if it's below level, or if it's like an on grade level. It'll kind of let you know, like, oh, you know what, this material right here, like this fluency check you did, is good at an independent level. So that the fluency rate and the passage he read is that's his level. Like he's good there. But if you give the child the same, the fluency check, and he's struggling, it's a frustrational level. So that text itself might be too difficult for the child. So then you would have to, modify it at that point. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to expose these children to these materials because, and sometimes our hands are tied. We have to because that's what the curriculum is telling us to do. But it doesn't mean that they're going to stay there. So we can modify, give them material that's a little bit more simple for them. But like I said, we scaffold and we gradually release them to more difficult text. I just wanted to, this is from one of the articles that I had added. The article is called Supporting Elementary Students Reading of Difficult Text. So this is one of the things that I was just talking about, how even though, sometimes the text is difficult, it's good. We need to expose them to it, and scaffolding, will build them up, and eventually they'll be able to read this text on their own. It says a student's instructional level is not necessarily a fixed state. Rather, it is something we should consider elastic, depending on the degree of instructional support provided. So again, there should be some room for growth. They should not remain at that level, instructional level, simply because that's where they belong. We need to expose them to these more difficult texts. This is the other another topic. It says learned adaptive response. This is where I had said I had to do a little bit more research because I truly wasn't sure what it was. But it's basically just the students' dependence, like on the teacher or the co-teacher or a better reader. So basically, is when we're reading together or in a small group and we're doing like the book or one of the articles and on the book, it gave an example where it was doing like a traditional round robin, and we've all done those before. Well, at least I did when I was growing up, and or popcorn reading, which shouldn't necessarily be done now, but what happens is that the teacher is more likely to interrupt those lower achieving students because they get stuck on that word. And so what ends up happening is that these students become, codependent on that person, on the teacher. So they're never able to actually learn how to decode, or because all of these interruptions keep on happening while they're reading. So they are more likely to be interrupted when they miscall a word. They are more likely to pause and wait for a teacher to prompt them. So they're used to that. They know, oh, this is a word I don't know, and they'll look for the teacher's, oh, like she's going to tell me the word. More likely to be told to sound out a word when interrupted. So they might stop at a word and the teacher might tell them, sound that out. And so then the child proceeds to sound that out. And they are more likely to be asked to read aloud because the teacher wants to hear from them, but they're just not developing fluency at this point because of all the interruptions, and they're not able to develop that reading fluency. And the last point was limited reading practice, which is just simply how much time are the students actually spending, doing independent reading? That's the big question. And and also the quality, the type of materials, what kind of reading material is being utilized. Um, so the end goal of, I think, teaching or not in general, is to have these kids enjoy reading. And so if the end goal is to have the students read, yet we don't provide them with the time to do so, they're not going to get better. So we need to provide them with enough time to practice, and with meaningful, engaging, material, something that they enjoy, because that's very important. And reading even repeated readings in the classroom, a book that you've already read, but you read it again because the kids really enjoy it. That's important and for the development of reading fluency. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit also about, I think it's pronounced dibbles. I looked it up. The lady said dibbles. Some people say dibbles. This lady said dibbles. So I'm just going to call it dibbles. But we don't do that at our district. We do something different. But dibbles is basically an assessment of like nonsense words, nonsense CBC words, and it does go into different phonetic skills, but the one that I'm about to show you is nonsense CVC words. And so what is happening is that districts or schools are gathering this data from the Dibbles assessment, but they aren't really highly predictive of reading achievement. At the end of the study, or in the book, in the chapter, it shows that it doesn't really measure anything. It just shows that the kids can read nonsense words very quickly. But it really isn't a predictive of reading achievement, as they move on to the upper grades. um, and so I'm going to show you just really quick so you understand what I'm talking about. So this is a first grade example of a teacher assessing a student in Dibbles, and you'll see how he just reads, and he's reading rather quickly, but you'll see how he just reads the words.
I would like you to read more make-believe words. Do your best reading, and if you can't read the whole word, tell me any sounds you know. Put your finger under the first word. Ready? Begin. Ball, give, or, jack, love, fish, cog, jack, odge, egg, laugh, peck, yos, nut, love, peck, thatch, fog, kiff, puck, og, black, feck, pin, fudge, cow, quav, mill, pev, sub, seb, av, sup, zub, zup, pidge, bop, fall, fav, zep, sick, opt, stop, tov, zev, kid, zuck, zop, app, bed, lip, fuck. Very nice work. Thank you so much, Rafa. That was an excellent. I would like you to read more make-believe words.
um, so you can see how, just reading nonsense words on a weekly basis, or even just a weekly fluency passage doesn't really do much to help the struggling reader, especially when they're struggling with fluency. Um, our focus is to get the students to read. If our focus is to get the students to read as fast as we can, then we are truly just ignoring the true meaning of reading fluency, which is that they go hand in hand, which is reading fluently, but essentially reading with comprehension. So it's not just reading these words as fast as they can. And like I said, in the chapter, in the article that I was reading, at the end of the studies, uh, they proved pointless. Dibbles doesn't really show or isn't a predictive of how they would do in the long run, as far as reading comprehension and reading fluency. We're going to go ahead and move into topic number 3. This was intervention. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the things that we can actually do, implement in our classrooms to develop fluency with our struggling readers. So there were 3 different types of interventions that we can use. We have small group approaches, we have whole class instructional redesign, and then we have rereading to meet a standard. So these were the three that were in the chapter, and I'm going to go ahead and break each one into. I'm going to go ahead and break each one down so we can understand it a little more. So this is the small group approaches. Um, and with small group approaches, we have the three different type of activities that you could do, which would be done in small group: choral reading, echo reading, and teacher models initial pages, which is kind of like modeled reading. So with choral reading, we have all the students in a group. Um, and we all read together. And this is great for differentiation whenever you're doing small group because you don't have to do the same passage. You can give, your lower group a simpler passage, and you can give your higher group a more challenging passage. Find that good that medium. Because we don't want to give the struggling readers, the simplest passage there, as we kind of want to challenge them a little bit, but they are going to be guided by the teacher. So that's the whole purpose of doing it in a small group. Um, so I'm going to show you a quick snippet of how we can do choral reading in the classroom, and this is in small group. This is with the
Have students
third grade
practice
students.
developing fluency by providing them ample opportunities to read independently at their independent level or read with feedback for text that is at their instructional level. Feedback should come from the teacher or a more able reader.
Today we are going to practice reading fluently. Now we know as good readers to read fluently you have to read the words correctly and you need to have expression in your words. Okay? We're going to practice reading the story A Dream Schedule several different ways. The first way we're going to do it is by choral reading. That means we all read together. Okay? All right. Finger on the first word. Now I want to make sure I hear your voice. We're going to go nice and slow so we can all say it together. Ready? Here we go. I don't like to forget my dreams. You know how sometimes you wake up and you can remember your whole dream perfectly. But by dinner, the entire thing is gone. I don't like that. Where do these dreams go? Why are dreams so easy to forget?
So that was just a quick snippet. I kind of wanted just to show you what choral reading looks like. So you can see that they're all together in a group. The activity is being led by the teacher. And the book, or yeah, well, the book says this, and also I feel that it's important that the teacher must read the text aloud before. So then the student kind of has like a notion of what the story is going to be about. Maybe some difficult vocabulary can be introduced. And so when you do the choral read, it just flows a little bit smoother, which is the purpose of doing it so that they can build their fluency. Now, it does not have to, you don't need to read an entire story. You could read sections, you could read segments. And so let's say you want to focus on tone, voice, you can read like, I put it in you can read like a scary segment that requires like whispering so they can kind of work on that where they have to work on their voice and their tone, which is the purpose of choral reading, just to practice on building their fluency. Next we have echo reading, which is a little like choral reading, except that this is a little it goes back and forth. Let me show you this.
And then you guys are going to say exactly what I said. Okay? Should you just memorize what I say or should you read from the text? Read from the text. Yes, ma'am. All right. Should you follow along while I read? Yes. Absolutely. Here we go. Or you drive by your old school. Or you drive by your old school. And then it all comes back to you. And then it all comes back to you. How does that happen? How does that happen? It's one big mystery. It's one big mystery.
So basically, echo reading is just that. They're echoing back what the teacher is saying, and you can hear it in their voice when she goes up and down with her voice, with her tone. The kids are also mimicking that, and so that kind of helps them build their fluency. Let me move on to the next. Um, yes, and so the teacher should show students fluent reading by reading in phrases, the proper intonation, which you can hear her doing while she's going up and down with her voice. So the benefit of this method is that it introduces new words. It gives the readers a sense of the story as opposed to them reading independently. If you were to give them this selection, they might just not truly understand, and so or get the gist of what is being read. So this kind of just helps them a little more with the fluency. So the next one was teacher modeled reading, which is a little similar. It's a lot of thinking aloud, and so the students kind of learn from that think aloud what the teacher is modeling. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this. This is just a basic one with one student.
Alright, good. So today I'm going to read the book Follow Me to you. Now, throughout the book, there might be some tricky words, so I'm going to use some of the reading strategies to try and figure out what those words are, okay? If I was red, I'd be as dazzling as the rising sun, and I'd slide across the snow with fearless foxes. If I was orange, I'd be as wild as the... I'm not sure what that word is. It's a bit of a tricky word, that one. I might use one of my strategies, and I'm going to start by reading on. So, fire. And that didn't really help me, so I might reread the sentence. I'd be as wild as the fire. I'm still not sure, so I'm going to look at the picture and see if I can get some clues from the picture here. An orange, yellow fire. Still not really helping me. Now, one thing I can see in this word that I'm not sure about is a little word that I know. Lit.
So you can see here the teacher is thinking aloud. She's modeling how the students should go about when they get stuck on a difficult word. And so she'll move on and she shows him, oh, I know this, I know the word flick. So she ends up covering her finger and chunking up the word, like the chunking strategy. And so this is basically what we do when we model reading. We model exactly what you would do if you were to get stuck on a word. And so then the children can see how they can problem solve themselves or address the difficulties that they might encounter as they read. And students might, by watching you do this, they learn that it's okay, that to make mistakes or to not know everything. And so we kind of want to foster that, like that safe space because we don't want them to feel nervous or pressured that they can't. So this is a great way to show them that with the think alouds as well. So the next one was whole class instruction. So now we looked at the small group, we looked at the modeled reading. This is whole class instruction activities that you could do. The first one is the shared book experience. The next one is readers theater, and the last one is it says puppet show. It's the puppet show. That's what it said on the chapter, but I'll go ahead and talk about that in a little bit. So with the shared book experience, they called it SBE on the chapter. So that's just the acronym. It can be done whole group, but I believe you could also do it small group with a shared book. It can be done, but they focus more on whole group here. It can be implemented with many different reading materials, although most of the research shows or has been done using predictable pattern text because you're going to be sharing this the words with the students, and so the text has to be a pattern, a predictable text so that they can follow along with you. While the teacher does this, the teacher can often highlight words, look at the letter sounds, onset rhyme, just rhyming patterns and syllables, and other types of patterns. And this can also help the students not only focus on reading fluency, but also phonics and phonemic awareness, especially for the little ones. I do this a lot with my students. we'll look at, oh, do you know, what is the beginning sound here? Oh, we see that these words rhyme. Oh, how many syllables are here? So you kind of focus on all that in while you're doing a shared book experience. So this is, I believe she's a first grade teacher, and you can see how the book is predictable and short words, and so the students are reading along with her.
And the first one that we're going to read real quick, I'm going to read a sentence in the story, and then you are going to read. When I say my turn, or if I point to myself, I will read it. When I point to you, you will. So let's practice. In the small, small town. Now we see the cover page again. So we'll get a chance to read the sentence again. In the small, small town. Water, waves, east parade. Cover, good. View, river.
So you can see how she also I'm sorry. She also was pointing back and forth, and I kind of like that strategy, where she models. Okay, it's my turn, your turn. So they're sharing that the text there. Move on to the next slide. So the last one here, well, no, it's not the last one. There's another one. Another strategy for whole group instruction would be readers theater. And I totally remember doing this when I was young. But this is also part of the whole class instructional redesign. So when you do readers theater, it can be a book, a poem, a passage, or even or an actual play where it has the roles. So students can select a role and practice their part, and then they can recite it. At the end, and it can be a whole process. You can start on Monday. And the one I'm going to show you, I know I'm using a lot of clips as visuals examples, but this teacher, I think he's a second grade teacher, and I'm not going to show you the whole clip because it was kind of long. I'm just going to show you on what they did on Friday where they recited, but he did break it down into chunks. So on Monday, he introduced it and he read it, and then I think Tuesday, like they selected their role, and then Wednesday, Thursday, they practice, and then on Friday they recited the actual selection in front of their peers. So what I'm going to show you is the actual like a presentation that they had in front of their peers, where you can hear the students reading, and you can tell that they've been practicing throughout the week. I remember papers down nice and loud. Entertain us. Entertain us. All right. Audience ready? Go. She said they had her look and couldn't into her or even into the school. She said she was returning it. I haven't been today. But then she tried having day and she couldn't. He took away her iPod and he said her new audience ready? Reader Theater group ready? Go. I didn't do my homework and he asked me why. I answered him in such two words. And he said you didn't try. I told him my dog ate it. He said you have no job. I said I went out and he said you have a job. I he told him I had chores to do. He said you watch TV. I said I saw the doctor. He said you wanted me. My teacher said excellent this, which made me very sad. It's hard to tell the teacher when the teacher is your dad. I thought this was so cute, and there's so many things that you can do, but I just thought this was adorable. It's second graders. So you can tell that they've practiced, and it helps them build their fluency. It helps them build their confidence, and it overall it just looks like they're having a good time. So I really enjoyed that. The last intervention strategy that can be done whole group, it's at the puppet show. I was trying to find a video, but then I realized that I have puppets in my classroom. I currently teach pre-K, and I have these two puppets that we use part of our curriculum. So this is Fanny the Frog, and this is Fernando the Frog. And so we use them I use them to incorporate in my read alouds when I'm reading to my students. But you can use them for the younger readers. They can use them to practice their own fluency. They sometimes grab them, and what we have is like a chart where it has like basic reading fluency stem like sentences with repeated pattern, or even just alphabet fluency where they're using their pointer and they're just going through the random like alphabet letters and telling me the name of the letter or the sound of the letter, because that is also fluency, and that can be done with the younger students like pre-K and K, because they're just developing that. They're not quite reading yet. But so I'm glad I took a picture. That we'll have the picture of the puppets, because we do this, and I can totally see this working for first grade, kinder, second grade. I know, and the third graders think they're too cool, but I've done stuff with them, and they love this kind of stuff. They're still kids. So that's just one of the things that you could incorporate in the classroom with your students to develop fluency. So this was the last one. It said rereading to meet a standard. And so basically, this is just repeated readings. And so three of the strategies that they used, the first one was tape check chart. The next one said tape time chart, which is very similar to the first one, but it's just one thing that changes. And then the last one said older kids, baby books. That's what the chapter said, but we're going to go ahead and elaborate on what that means. So some of the these are repeated reading strategies. So the first one said tape check chart. So basically, it's just students recording themselves and replaying it, and then while they listen to themselves, they follow along with what they just read. This can be done. I know it says audio tape. I know this book is a little old, but now everybody has Chromebooks, everybody has iPads. There's so many applications that these kids can use. I even also saw one where they can animate like photographs, and the mouth is moving. And so the kids are having fun, making the duck talk, or like anything, any inanimate object. And they make a little smiley face and it moves. And so they're just practicing, they're reading, and they're developing fluency while they're having fun. And so the second one said take time chart. And basically, it's the same thing. You're just not recording yourself. You're using a stopwatch timer just to kind of like beat the time, and to record how long it takes to complete the passage or the selection, whatever it is you're doing. So this can be done in the fluency station. You can show the kids how to play. They can play together. They can record each other, so they can make a game out of it. The last one was older kids baby books. So what happens? This is kind of like peer tutoring. So we want the older kids sometimes that are struggling. Like let's say you have a fifth grader reading at a second grade level. So what we would do is pair that fifth grader up with a second grader, um, and we call it peer tutoring. So that fifth grader is now tutoring that second grader, and they're both getting the benefit, because the fifth grader is practicing reading that is at their level, and the second grader is learning from the fifth grader. So with the younger students, and so this is a great practice, and for them not to feel as embarrassed, for the fact that they are in fifth grade and are reading second grade level. So this actually kind of boosts their confidence, and this is something that actually goes on at my current campus. And the kids really seem to enjoy it. I see the big kids pulling out the lower kids. They're going over sight words. They're reading their books together, and I think everybody benefits from that, and it really boosts the older kids' confidence, and it makes them feel, that they're being useful, and I'm sure that they take pride in that. And so I see that in the school, and it's good to see that's a strategy that's being used in my campus. So. what is the big takeaway, if anything, out of all of this? I did learn a lot about fluency myself, as I went back and reflected on my own, teaching journey. Because when I started off, I was doing things completely incorrectly. I'm sure I'm still doing some things wrong. I'm trying to learn as I go. But if anything, I'm going to go ahead and read. This is from one of the articles that I had. The article was called Becoming a Fluent and Automatic Reader in the Early Elementary School Year. So I'm going to go ahead and read this quote. It says, if anything, our findings support the importance of carrying out fluency oriented instruction alongside comprehension instruction. The key is to remember that fluency is an important bridge to comprehension, but not the ultimate destination. And so, what we see is that yes, fluency is important, but it's not the primary goal. And so, as we see that these students grow and they master in their fluency, the need for these fluency strategies diminishes, because then now we have to practice, focus on comprehension. But we need to make sure that as we are focusing, or placing the importance on fluency instruction, it needs to be alongside comprehension. They work hand in hand. Um, and so this is the end of my presentation. I hope you learned a lot as well as I know I did. I learned a whole lot from this chapter. So thank you very much.